Hi, and welcome to Yeshivat Shem Ve'ever. After the week of Shavuos is now over, here we are, and this is Parashas Nasso. Pardon me as I just get my bearings straight, as we're in a little bit of a new venue, in terms of the computer and the link, holiday, recording devices. Alright, this is Parashas Nasso. I'm Rabbi David Katz, Yeshivat Shem Ve'ever, Moshe Shabbos, Parsha Shavua. As always, we'll start the class with an introduction with the Torah, and onwards into the Zohar, Revelation, into the Parsha, and the class as such. Questions, comments, or feedback, I can be reached at rabbikatz@virtualyeshiva.com. Alright, what a doozy. What a doozy. There's a lot to be said. I hope everybody read the article. Was everybody able to see a copy of the article at soulmazel.blogspot.com? Okay. The basic premise going into the article was that I found to take the liberty to finally address more of the Ger Tzedek into our discussion of the Ger Toshav. The Ger Tzedek versus Ger Toshav is... The Ger Toshav has many levels, as we're going to say. The Ger Tzedek, literally, as we all know, Ger Toshav means the Ger, for layman's terms, English, the Noahide. He is Toshav, he is a dweller, and he is dwelling in the world as a myriad of levels he can observe. For our basic premise, he has accepted the 7 laws of Noah, and he is an advocate of Torah in Israel on some level. The Ger Tzedek is your righteous version or blend of this Ger Toshav. So generally when we teach on these topics, I haven't really stipulated the Ger Tzedek so much. There hasn't been a point to. But this week comes to light really and clearly the Ger Tzedek versus the Ger Toshav. So let's go ahead and jump in. I'm going to let you know, this is quite something. The Haftorah is predicated on Shimshon, aka in English, Samson. So everybody, I'm sure, is aware to some degree of Samson. He is the Nazirite who is from the womb, refraining from alcohol, wine. His hair won't grow. He has exceptional strength. He's a judge in the Tanakh. I'm sure all of us have, at some point in time, become familiar with Samson. Just even touching on Samson, at this point, I have not really, before when I got into this, Samson was something of a revelation. Why does the Parsha Haftorah bring Samson? The obvious answer is that the Parsha talks about the Nazir. There's actually a lot of famous things on the internet, come to think of it, that Mashiach would be a Nazir. And nobody says that, actually, in classic literature. But yet, we know that Jacob on his deathbed, and interestingly enough, he calls to Jacob to listen, and Israel are gathered sons of Jacob, listen, sons of Israel. We know that Jacob is the term, kind of a Kabbalistic general term, for everybody that learns Torah. So the Ger is really connected with Jacob. Israel is the inner dimension of Torah, what's called Pshatei Torah, the level of Yeshivish Torah, the Jewish style of learning, whereas Jacob is universal, and I think the Ger excels in the Torah style of Jacob, whereas The Jew excels in the Torah style of Israel. And again, they're both synonymous and intertwined. The Jewish style is conducive to 613 without 7. Whereas the Ger is kind of intuitive of 613 into 7. That's the Torah of Jacob. So when the two work together, you really have a finely tuned machine of the Jew aware of, why am I doing this? And ultimately it's because he's commanded the 7 laws as everybody else. And then for the Ger, that 613 Mazal world is illuminated. He now has vessels to put to what he always knew was true. So he's going to walk this path of 7 laws in darkness. He knows it. He can do it. It's not beyond him. But all the merrier. If you're going to turn the light on, it's going to help out a lot. To be a light to the nations. The Jew, on the other hand, really has lost the boat. He forgot he's a Ger. Doesn't really have any awareness of those 7. He's in his light world of 613 that he doesn't even realize is dark without the Ger. So you need both. The idea of Jacob and Israel in Torah, then, Jacob on his deathbed is going to prophesize that when he sees the blessing for Dan, in English maybe you call it Dan, Dalad Nun, that he thinks it's, they say, that it's the Messiah. And he prays for Shimshon to succeed, but Shimshon dies, therefore he's not the Mashiach, so Jacob is confused. The Zohar comes along, not the one in particular for this point, but the Zohar says, who in fact helps Mashiach succeed? And it's none other than Sarya ben Dan, a character by the Zohar's testimony. The redemption comes by the helping aid of Sarya ben Dan. And Sarya, the Ger is called a Sar. For example, a Ravna on the Temple Mount is called Sar Metzudat Sion, the minister of the Temple Mount. So the Ger by nature is a Sar. Then he comes from the tribe of Dan. The question is why? And the answer is because it goes back to Shimshon. Shimshon, and we're going to be getting into this topic, I think, as a major faction of the Ger fabric. I haven't exhausted it yet. I haven't worked it out to the end all. But what I have seen is that the peripheral world, they call it the negative, right? It's not, at this point, Shimshon proper, but Shimshon, if you were to kind of edit him out personally, his body, and only analyze his world. Just like Jethro. Jethro is a convert to Judaism, or is he a Ger? I say he has been teaching that he's a Ger. But yet we learn the laws of conversion from Jethro. That's a fact. So whether or not you say he's a Ger or a convert is kind of irrelevant in the realm of law. He was a Ger, but yet it's so synonymous, which is called Mepia Gavura, from the mouth of God I heard too. You can equally ascertain the rights and law of Jethro as a convert. So this is why the Ger, Tzedek specifically, is such a hidden matter. For every Ger Tzedek mentioned in Torah, you can always say, is it a convert or is it a Ger? And Shimshon is one of these characters. He is right on the fence. His world is either very Jewish, because we're told, and it's in the Tanakh, he's a judge, it's a happy story, everyone goes home and smiles. Shimshon, you were the greatest Jew, you could have been Messiah. But if you look carefully, and you don't even have to look that careful, everything about the story, including him, does it really resonate a Jew? Can we honestly say that? Because when you really get into it, and the Nazirite, is a Nazirite something a Jew would do? I mean, we all know in religious past who the Nazirite image is, and what, the Jews don't go around being Nazirites. It's not a Jewish thing to do. It's forbidden today because without the temple, you can't get out of your vow. So it's just not something Jews do. But the non-Jewish world holds the Nazirite as some kind of a proper being level. So when you look at the whole picture, Shimshon, the Nazirite, it really resonates Ger Torah, not Jewish. Just like Jethro, just like Ruth, and all the topics you say, we're told it's Jewish, and the Jews that are being told that not Jewish Torah is Jewish, and it ruins people's faith on both sides. And Shimshon, I believe, is the newest character that fits the bill. His entire life can be right straddle that fence, but everything about him and what he represents accentuates, highlights, illuminates. If you're going to talk about a light to the nations, the story of Shimshon, as prophesied as Mashiach by Jacob, he is a great light to nations as anybody will ever be. And you have the priesthood of Pinchas as Mashiach coming from Shem, the new type of kingdom of David rooted also in Shem, Tehillim 110, the type of prophecy of Avadia from wisdom coming from Shem. And then you have the judge. Shem was the ultimate judge as he judged Rebekah with Jacob and Esau in her womb. And here you have Shimshon. History knows what he is, but everything about him is ambiguous. And for that alone, he is a light to the nations more than probably anybody that will ever live. Jacob saw it, prophesied about it. In fact, who's the angel that Manoach, which spells from Noah, mind you, Shimshon's father, who's the angel that prophesied the whole thing? Pinchas Elijah. So there you have the whole family coming back together. The idea of the ambiguity between the levels of Ger Tzedek. So the Haftorah is predicated on Shimshon based on the Nazirite. And what's interesting about the Nazir is he is connected to the temple. And when you look into the laws of the Ger, and the offering he brings to become a Ger, the Mishnah in the Tractate Krisis says the Ger and the Nazir are almost identical in what they have to do. So there's a lot of Ger in the Nazir, wherever you look. Once you have the Nazir related to the Ger in the temple, you start to open up the Parsha and you start to look at it from the perspective of a Ger. All the concepts of the Gerim. And that's what the article is going to be predicated about, under the premise of stealing from the Ger, Gezel a Ger. I'm kind of tongue-tied because there's so much I want to say about Shimshon, so let's just hold off. But what you have is the Mazal, his world. The world of Shimshon is this Mazal that comes from the world of the temple point of view. And the Ger, as we're going to end the article, is a point of view of the temple. Now, I know it's a big topic, but switch gears over to the Zohar. The Zohar starts off with talking about praying, and the three types of prayer, Shachris, Mincha, Mariv, based on a night's sleep, continuing from last week's Parsha. And it's predicated on the word Nasso as the name of the Parsha. And the Zohar portion ends also with Nasso and prayer. It says that the 12 princes at the end of the Parsha are parallel to the 12 princes of Ishmael. And the 12 princes of Ishmael are the essence of the negative, evil sect, let's say, of the revelation of above, Malchut, where God's name is revealed, and it comes down into this world. As Malchus is called Yam, a sea, it says there are 12 channels in the sea. Why? When the sea split out of Egypt, right? Every tribe had a channel. That mirrored the world above. Once you have the 12 channels, you're talking about the 12 tribes in the matter of connecting to the altar above. In the matter of prayer, and the level of the addition of prayer service of the Arizal, the Kabbalist was thought 1600, Etz Chaim, Tree of Life author, says the 13th gate of the Baal Tshuva brings basically all 12 levels up. 13 is the Gematria Echad, 1, or love. Now what's interesting is the Zohar then explains that 12 is none other than 3 times 4. And 3 is represented by the 3 levels of times of prayer in a day. So through prayer, the influx comes into the world and negates the rulership of the 12 princes of Ishmael, represented by the exile of Ishmael, and the Ger proper, his exile that's particular to him is the exile of Ishmael. As we know that the Jews are in the exile of Edom, Esav, and simultaneously, as told by Daniel's prophecy, there is an exile for the Ger of the Ishmaelite exile. And that exile is predicated on prayer. Because Ishmael's name means God will hear, and it's the level of crying out to God. So the Ger represents in the union with Israel a level of tefillah or prayer that allows basically the Jew and the Ger to ascend through levels of learning, prayer. It's the essence of all Torah learning and prayer, serving God. The Jew can't ascend. Like Rabbi Akiva goes to Pardes above, ascension in soul. Like the Baal Shem Tov, when he went to the chamber of the Mashiach. There's essentially no ascension without the missing element of the Ger. The Jew will cry out positively from the focus of the Ger. The only problem is, what is this 12? 3 and 4. Three types of prayer, but what are the 4? So the Zohar says that the 3 represent in the tree of life the middle kav or pillar, the right and the left. That represents the priest, the Levite, the Israelite. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All the symbolism in the Torah. And the idea of prayer is the idea of the shofar blast of Rosh Hashanah. And if the Jewish influx is coming down into the world, the shofar blast must ascend then upwards, going against the grain, so that you can visualize and hear at the same time. So when you look at, everybody hold up your index, middle, and ring finger, like the number 3, okay? And your pinky and your thumb eliminate from the picture. Can everybody do that? Remove your pinky and thumb from perspective and look at your 3 middle fingers. We good? Now do it in your left hand and make your palm facing your face. So we're all on the same page. And now go ahead and your ring finger is the right. That's, let's say, Abraham, the morning prayer. The far left finger is Isaac and Mincha, afternoon prayer. And the middle finger is Jacob and the night prayer. That's 3. Now, we need the missing 4. Because if the prayer is going to be successful to do this, you need 4. So then it's explained. Where's the ger? The ger then is like the rest of your hand, the wrist, the arm, drawing downwards. That's the 4th pillar. But it doesn't exactly work. Because what is this for? It's a practical service. So keep your hands up. Look at the space between your pinky and your ring finger. And I'll call that 1. And the space between your ring finger and your middle finger, that's 2. And the space between your middle finger and your index finger, that's 3. And the space between your thumb and your index finger, that's 4. So it's the fingers are 3 and the spaces are 4. You might know this as the shin, that has 3 heads, the letter shin, that grace the head to fill in prayer. And the mysterious 4-headed shin on the other side of the black box that everyone says is the merit of the ger. So when you pray 3 times a day, the fingers are still there. You still have your 3 fingers. Mind you, 3 and 4 is 7. We all know 7. 3 times a day, you do the power of 4. Cohen, Levite, Israel, ger. And around the prayers, there's 2 sides to every finger. So when the ger and the Jew are on the same page, ascension, descension, Ratzov Veshuv, running and returning, the essence of this whole story. Does everybody see it? Type 1 if you see what I'm talking about, the fingers and the spaces. Does everybody concur? Everyone's aware? Type 2 if you're not good. So the Zohar is saying in Parashas Nasso, which the entire doctrine of Kabbalah, I was shocked to find out, is in this parsha. Everything you will read from the Rizal, Etz HaChaim, the Tree of Life, it's in this parsha. I was reading it, I was amazed. And it's because of Shimshon. It's this Nazir. This non-Jewish element that everybody looks at it and says, how is this Jewish? And when you put it in the context that the Kabbalah is coming from Shimshon, Shimshon represents the perfect blend of Jew-ger in the perfect ambiguous nature. To the point that all the characters are around him, everything is there. Even the male-female element. He is the Kabbalistic universe. That's why Mashiach Torah is the essence of Kabbalah on a practical level that brings the redemption. So if there's kind of a missing code to put into Kabbalah, as if to say, what's the end? How do we do it? What's the end game? You plug in the Shimshon program. And you plug that into our Parsha. And that's called the Zohar on the Parsha. And it spits out and computes how the game is won. And that's how I'm going to introduce this week's Parsha. Do you see how deep this one is? This is not... I wrote the article on Friday, and when I sat down today to do the Haftorah and the Zohar, I was not exactly... I was very surprised to see that's what's going on. Because I kind of got there in the article. And then you see the Zohar, this is not a joke, because what I got out of the article was the nature of the ger in the temple, and that's exactly what the prophet saw with Shimshon. Meaning that is the mentality of the Parsha, the temple, Shimshon. Now, when you bring in the full detail, you get the entire Kabbalistic universe. You get the perfect symmetry of the ger-Jew relationship, how they work together not only in Torah, but in prayer. The ger praying on high is rooted in heaven, is the root of his soul. The Jew on earth, the ger in Asiya, the Jew in Atzilus, they compose the entire Kabbalistic world. So when we work together, both sides, And the temple is the operating mechanism. Because it's rooted in the temple above. That's what this upper altar is, where the 12 princes in holiness are. Our job is to bring that down. And that's the eradication of Ishmael. Is it an accident the mosque is on the Temple Mount? And we're trying to eradicate the 12 princes of Ishmael? And right now you have the Arab Spring uprising. Maybe Assad's the last one, who knows? Because they exist in heaven and earth. And the Ger is a heavenly being in his root. The Jew is earthly. Put them together, that counters Ishmael. The end of Ishmael is the end of Edom. It's even practically. What holds up Edom is the oil of money. They're wrapped up in each other. When the Jew and the Ger are face to face, not back to back, he makes the evil powers of the world back to back and not face to face. When they're back to back, they're not a mate. That makes din, judgment, harsh, destruction, breakage. The Jew and the Ger face to face can contain it when based on Torah and Chesed, kindness. And that's what this is about. Now, onwards into the Parsha. The Gezel Ger. The Gezel Ger is the idea that somebody steals from a Ger. At this point, we don't know which Ger it is. He dies. He has no kin. Where does the money go? He who ripped him off must make restitution, confess, pay everything back. And since there are no kin, the money goes to the Kohen, to the priests. The priests treat it like gifts. There's something called gifts of the Kohen that everybody gives. And therefore it's divvied up equally. And that is the law. Now, so many questions are going to come out of this. What kind of Ger is it? Why doesn't he have kin? Why the association with the priests? It's a very earthy question or concept. But when we explore it, we understand why and what are the parameters of this mitzvah. Now, once we focus on Gezel Ger, and again, I honed in on Gezel Ger, stealing of the Ger, and the Haftorah is going in on Shimshon. And Shimshon represent another edition of the Ger. So whether, what the idea is that however you look at the Parsha, whether you're consciously aware or not, you're really looking at Ger Torah. So look at the Parsha, and look what it is. The responsibilities of the Levium. We're going to say that the Ger of the temple, he is also included in this. Well, I'll say that for the end, but remember at the end to discuss the Ger and his association with the temple. I don't want to give the end of the class right now, but that's how the Parsha starts. Then there's a census, which is name, mission, soul, having a name, purification of the camp. What defines a pre-Ger is in his idolatry. He lacks Jewish impurity. The more he becomes Adam by rejection of idolatry and coming into Torah, Ger, 7 laws, all the way through Ger Tzedek, he becomes applicable to the concept of Jewish impurity. The impurity, let's say the Pope impurity, becomes Moses impurity, meaning there's 2 types of impurity, the negative and the positive. Everybody in the world has a relationship to impurity. The trick is, are you drawing it from the negative forces or positive? So it says to purify the camp. That's to say, the ger should become 7 ger tzedek. Then there's gezel ger in the parsha. Then you have the sota, the wayward wife. And this is a message to Israel, to recognize what the relationships are. And Hashem loves the ger loves Hashem. To not recognize the ger, you're like a sota. And the barley that explodes her stomach, look to the story of Ruth. Shavuos, the barley. Yet another strong ger mention. Then you have the priests with the sota, the Nazirite, Shimshin, the temple, the priestly blessing, which goes back to Abraham and Shem. When you diagnose the language in the Hebrew, Hashem should bless you and guard you. The whole thing is a blessing that explains the passage of Abraham and Shem. And again, the ger who learns Torah is compared to the high priest. Now you have the offerings of the leaders, the tribes, the 12 princes to give it, which is, again, the eradication of Ishmael. That's the whole parsha. So you see the parsha, it can be, not only is it seen through the light of the ger, but it's radically deep. I mean, we're talking Ruth, the Nazir, the temple, Shimshin, end of exile, Mashiach, tree of life, priestly blessing with the secret of Shem and Abraham. There's no end to it. So once you find your ger entrance, whether it be gezel ger, Shimshin, if you meditate on the parsha long enough, and I suggest people do it, just meditate on it. Go through it and say to yourself, where's the ger here? I ask you guys to do it this week. Go through and see, and try to find how many words, concepts, locations, do we come face to face, toe to toe with the ger on whatever issue. And you'll see the parsha is of the ger. The Gerim are redeemed by Mashiach ben Menashe. Menashe comes from this language nasa, to marry, to lift. In fact, Menashe means to jump out and go up. Nasa is to lift. So we know the final redemption comes through the redemption of the ger, through the faction of Mashiach ben Yosef, that of Mashiach ben Menashe. The fulfillment of Mashiach ben Ephraim. Two different levels of Mashiach ben Yosef, where Mashiach ben Menashe is the level of Moses, we'll call the soul of Moses, coming into that of Mashiach that ends all exile. We're talking about the highest levels of redemption. It's the end all of all Torah, Kabbalah, and the idea is it's saying the ger and the Jew at the end, when they unite, that's what triggers all of this. That's the level we have to get to conceive this. Shimshin, the temple, the sota, Ruth, priestly blessing. It's the union of the two. And the idea is the Mazal world of the ger is the temple. And where's the ger from? Malchus of Atzilus. There's 4 worlds: Asiya, Yitzir, Bria, Atzilus. The world of the 10 Sphirot, the 10 emanations of God. The lowest level, which is the vessel to hold the light, it's called Tzedek. It's called Tzedek because the Ger Tzedek is there. That's the altar to the temple in the upper world. So that's where the Ger is. He is there. In the highest level of the world beneath that, Bria, looking up and going into that temple. He's in a perpetual state of entering the temple. The Jews looking at it from the other perspective, the perpetual state of coming out of the temple. So one is looking to build it, erect it, go in. One's looking to, now that it's built, how do we bring it out to the world? When those two forces collide in union, again, another way of viewing the essence of the Kabbalistic universe. Redemption, Messiah, fulfillment of Torah, whatever you want, to explain it as it's everything. The point now, what type of ger, back to the original discussion, what type of ger is this? We have, okay, the ger, the temple, it's all good, he's really holy and spiritual, and if you rip him off, it's bad, and if he dies, you owe him money. Okay, very technical and whatever. So the point is there are a lot of types of ger. So which type of ger toshav is it? Which type of ger tzedek is it? And the first thing we have to entertain is there are a lot of ger toshav. The lowest level of ger toshav is a slave. That's not to say the Noahide is a slave. It's to say that the lowest usage of the term, the Jewish people, let's say, go out amongst the idolaters. He couples with a woman. They have a child. He brings the kid back to Israel. He is technically called a toshav. And he is effectively a slave. It's called Eved Kanani, and the Gentile slave. But here it's called in one of the earlier parshas, it's called a toshav, b'nei toshavim, the sons of the toshavim. That's the worst case scenario. Then there's all the way ger toshav of renouncing idolatry. Then there's the idea of accepting the 7 laws. Then there's the idea of all the way keeping the entire Torah. So the range is everything you can possibly imagine. And again, there are, this is just life. There are good people, bad people. And there's good situations, bad situations. So the ger is not, the story is romantic in terms of Shimshon and on the high end when everything goes right. But, there are those that get in situations that are not good. So the ger is not exempt from life situations, which makes it all the more real and all the more serious. Now you have the idea gezel a ger. What's interesting about that, as a concept, the stealing of the ger, gezel is stealing, just for the record. The 3 sins of the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that we repair through prayer: idolatry, murder, and adultery. So Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are the Torah concepts of the repair. They represent that. So Abraham would say, comes to Hashem to the exclusion of Ishmael, particularly, where Hashem didn't have an exclusion, per se. Esav, because this is the conversion, from Shem into the forefathers, the conversion of process until Sinai is underway. So the first repair is prayer, and removal of impurity, of the negative force, and the 3 cardinal sins of Adam. So idolatry goes out, murder with Esav goes out, and immorality of the Erev Rav go out. Now you have Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, 3 forms of prayer, and with the sum total of all of the sins of Adam unite into what's called stealing. Ultimately, what did Adam do? He took from the tree he shouldn't have. That's stealing. So gezel a ger is the ger commandment association that when you master the topic, again, Parashas Nasso, the Messiah, all the Kabbalah, all the kishkes that come into it, is really the repair of Adam, which is the mission of Shem. So if you want to repair stealing, then gezel a ger is your mitzvah. And meaning understanding the light in the vessel of stealing from the ger. Which means you have to know who the gerim are. You have to know what is a ger toshav. Ultimately understanding the ger tzedek. Bring in ger tzedek. Who is this guy? Seriously, who is he? So there's 2 levels of ger tzedek. Ger tzedek vadai, a one-timer, and a ger tzedek who's attempting to really bleed into, let's say, the Torah world. A ger tzedek is a ger toshav, and he accepts a lot. He accepts a lot of Torah. I don't know, it's not that whatever he doesn't accept it's mainly because he just hasn't bothered to go to it. He hasn't gotten to it. So he's taking on a lot of things. Ger Tzedek, that's a Ger Tzedek Vadai. He's a repentant Bolshuva. He's checking it out. He's on his own walk. The other Ger Tzedek, who's just a standard, let's say, conceptual, I am Ger Tzedek, he is out to accept the whole Torah. That's really what he's about to do. And the only thing he is not doing is he's not eating kosher meat exclusively. But then, this is the idea of the broken tablets of Moses, that by the breakage is actually the ascension on higher. That the Torah says, don't eat kosher meat exclusively if you're a ger. So when he does it, he says, I'm breaking the Torah, because the Torah says, don't eat non-kosher meat, but when I do it because the Torah tells me to, I'm still keeping the entire Torah. Right? So it's a backwards way of keeping the Torah. So he's doing a sin, he's prescribed to, he's keeping the Torah, and now he has the merit of keeping the whole Torah, yet he hasn't. Which means now he's really in motion. He is receiving the whole Torah. He is in a constant Sinai. So when he keeps the Shabbat, he's keeping basically everything, he is prescribed to make a sin on Shabbat, which is called Ochel Nefesh, the indulgence for the health of the soul. Whatever he needs to do, he attends to his body based on he is eating non-kosher meat, because he is always receiving how to do things the best way. He really is, he's walking a path of righteousness. Why does he not want to convert? First of all, conversion, for whatever reason, it doesn't have to be done. I'm just saying why, personally, for this guy, why does he not want to? And one reason is, he is constantly improving. He technically is keeping the Torah righteous more than anybody. When he takes it on, he takes it on. And Shabbos is an infinite, perfective route. So he's never keeping Shabbat, let's say, as he is, because he's still in the world as a ger. He wants to come to class on Shabbos to hear Shabbos, take notes. If he takes a rest on Shabbat, he can't write down the notes on Shabbat. It's counterproductive. The old saying is like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. And he doesn't want to have his cake and eat it too. Otherwise he would convert. If you want to have your cake and eat it too, you convert. If you don't, because you see the greatness in it, meaning that both sides, there is something to it. We're not trying to say there's one side here. There are two sides. The Jew is commanded to be on one side. The ger has the right to choose which side he wants. And the ger tzedek is privileged. He doesn't have to convert. He walks the most perfectly righteous path possible by perfecting the laws, relationship with God, and he can say he did it as a ger tzedek. If, again, wants to convert, doesn't want. And at the end of the article, we're going to say some gerim cannot convert. Again, I'll save that to what I was saying about the gerim in the Beis Hamikdash. So how is Gezel a ger different than Gezel a goy, meaning idolater? An idolater has kin automatically. It's a law. It's the way of the world. He wasn't a spontaneous generation, immaculate conception, so to speak, right? He has family. He didn't just appear, beamed on earth. So therefore, if you financially have a problem with him, you can pay the family. So the Torah commands, whenever you deal with an idolater, if you got to deal with him, you deal with him. To rip him off is a chilul Hashem. You can't just say you're just an idolater. What do I got to do with you? No, it's a chilul Hashem. You can't do it. But you don't have to answer to his kids or his cousins, whatever it is that inherits him. So therefore, the gezel a ger. The question is, what level of ger toshav has the kin or not? This is where the Beis Din court system comes into effect. The court systems of the 7 laws, one of their major prime functions is to ascertain the level of Ger Toshav. Meaning, let's say, what degree has he renounced idolatry? Has he? Has he done it enough? To the point we say, this guy, is his son really his son to me? Do I have to acknowledge the son in any way, or what's the relationship with the guy? The Ger Tzedek is fair game. If you're a Ger Tzedek, you have no family. Your world of the non-Jewish world, you are done with it. As far as you're concerned, you are in the Jewish world. For you, Shabbos is normal. For you, the monetary laws of the Torah are normal. You've accepted the whole Torah. You're playing by Torah rules. Per force, your family doesn't get it. So you have no kin. I rip you off. I do tshuva. You die. Stuff goes to the priests. Because you believe in the priests. You believe in the temple. Ger Toshav? I don't know. Maybe he has kin, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's righteous, maybe he's not. I don't know. And there's really no way to know the fine details if it's really a close case. That's one major reason why you need Beis Din. Why you need Beis Din to elect Ger Toshav, elect Ger Tzedek, and distinguish who's who. Have you accepted the Torah? Have you not? Are you observing? Not so much for the Ger to say, I am a Ger this, I am a Ger that. The Jew needs to know, just like the Jew needed to know for the impurity's sake way back in the day. What it comes now in the realm of holiness is, what's our relationship? And not in terms of, do I have to talk to you or not? That's obvious. Love the Ger. All Gerim you have to love. That's not the question. The question is, it's like in Back to the Future. It's not about you, it's your kids, Marty. Right? So we need to know about your kids. Do I have a relationship with your kids? Are your kids inheriting you? Are they not inheriting you? Your world, what level is your world? You're fine. I need to know about your world. So if I'm coming to make restitution, where am I going? Is it a good neighborhood or bad neighborhood? The Ger Toshav may have only rejected idolatry on a basic level. The Ger Tzedek, he may be holding by the entire Torah. So they're both a no-brainer on the positive and negative scale. The idea for the Ger Tzedek is, seichel or intellect is called a ger in this world. Torah is called a ger in this world. Torah, intellect, they are not of this world. So to be a ger means you don't belong in this world. So how do you find a world? You're a weirdo. By joining the Jewish nation, i.e. the Torah universe, you say, that's my world. You know, this whole thing about, nothing opening on Sunday, I want Saturday off. The Jewish world, not Jewish people religion, the Jewish world is the sanctuary for the ger, the Beit HaMikdash for the ger. That's where he feels comfortable, normal. So he is operating by Torah law, not to say, well, look, I'm operating by Torah law. For him, it's where he operates best. He just doesn't operate optimally in the outside world. Ger Tzedek, now that we have understood the Ger Tzedek reality, the benefit of being the Ger Tzedek is he has liberty. Right now, let's say he has a relationship to the red heifer, purity, temple service, close association with the temple service with the priests. A ger who learns Torah is like the high priest. So in a temple reality, he is really at home. Look at the Rechabites, the Kenites, they are home. Home sweet home. The land of Shabbat, everything is shut down. So the level of Ger Toshav is how much are you taking the liberty of the Ger Tzedek. To the point, are you really the fourth branch to the Shin? Are you taking on the Shabbat? At what extent? Now for the Kishkes. The Kishkes of the class. Why can't this guy just convert already? Right? A lot of rabbis today, wrongly, I might add, are throwing in, just convert. I don't want to deal with you, just convert. First of all, it's wrong. We've already been through this a million times. No need to state again. But now I'll say, existentially why. There is a concept of a Ger Tzedek who cannot convert. He is intoxicated. Why can't the Nazir drink wine? He is intoxicated for God. That's the Ger. There's a Ger Tzedek who he can't convert. The Jewish world, no, I hate to break the news, but not all the Jews are in love with God so much. So for them, working in the world is not such a big deal. In fact, they abuse that base Hamitish reality to some extent. So to convert and go into a high-impact world, they can't keep it together. In the Ger world of money and finances and just money getting, not possession-based, but money, all the more so he can't function there. Because this guy really just wants God. He can't have either the Ger world or the Jewish world. He needs God 24/7. Conversion will just make it worse. So what does he do? He's going to come under the category what's called Toshav Kohen. That sounds a little dodgy on the ears. I'm aware of that. He needs Shabbat. He needs Shabbat. Why is Shabbos essential for the Gerim? Because you need one day where you're not part of either world. The Jewish world, well, did you not pull the peas out of the carrots? Did you go to mincha and this and that, and the halacha? That's not resting, especially for the Ger. So Shabbos Jew is not exactly the answer here for this guy. And the Ger world is, forget resting on Saturday, Sunday, just work. Make money. Then you'll go on a vacation where you can work even more. He says, no, thank you. I need a day to be drunk with God. Not drunk literally, but just soak up God. Like base of Mitish reality, just veg out and read the Torah, the prophets. Be with God for a day. So the Ger today, as we get closer to the temple, if you wanted the biggest proof of why you need Shabbos, you are killing the Ger if you don't give him Shabbos. And the halacha is to kill a Ger who's coming out of the pit, to send him back to the pit. You have transgressed the Torah in the most severe way possible. The Ger coming out of the pit is on Friday night. He comes out and says, hey, do I have Shabbos? The Jews say, no, go back. They're saying, what are you doing to this guy? He needs Shabbos. So by teaching and we're giving the awareness of Shabbos, you are not sending that Ger back to the pit of death. So as we get closer to the temple, Shabbos is mandatory. This guy's drunk. Leave him alone. He wants to be with God. He is that Nazir. So there's something called Toshav Kohen, where the Ger, this kind of guy, he can't keep it together. You might call him a Nebuch, kind of I hate to use the words, kind of a lowlife. That's how it's how he's perceived. He's not. He's a really holy guy. He really knows God, loves God. He can't work. He's not disabled. He wants to work in the temple. But you're not a Cohen. You're not a Cohen. Go. No. So the Cohen says, look, we got a loophole here. Now, I'm broke. I'm a Cohen. I don't have a job either. I get money from everybody else. So come by me. I'll buy you. I'll get them to give me money to buy you. And technically, it's a slave. But the Jews come out of Egypt to be slaves to God, servants to God. And if I'm a good Cohen, I say, I'm buttled to God. I'm nullified to God. Come by me. I'm not putting you to work. I work in the temple, for crying out loud. So what do I get to do, the Ger says? He says, chill. Sit in the temple. Be with God. That's the inheritance. The Toshav Kohen, who becomes he becomes effectively property of the temple. And God loves the ger. Oh, so maybe you want to say God doesn't love the ger? Like all the people today want to say, well, maybe God does love the ger. Maybe God means it when he says he loves the ger. And maybe the ger really loves God. So maybe there's a little romance happening in the temple where the soul's going to where it wants to go. He's free from the labors of this world to simply bask with God. Rechabites, Kenites. Rechabites didn't drink alcohol, so I wonder why. Ger, Shimshon, temple. There's something to be said about temple dwellers. What does it say by Shem? The Ole Shem, your future will dwell in the tents of Shem. What's the tent? The temple, the Mishkan, the tabernacle. The ger is meant to dwell in the tents of Shem. And this is it. Who builds the temple? The sons of Shem. Are you going to tell me that you're not in the temple that you built? Well, thanks for building it. Now take off. Go away. Now come on. The ger is at home in the temple. So this is what makes it work. The Kohanim are working. Hey, we need a 10th guy. Who do we got? The ger says, I'm here. I'll help. Oh, thanks. The Kohen taught Torah. He was the original rabbi. There was no rabbi. And who's sitting around listening to the Torah being taught all day long in the temple by the priests? A ger that learns Torah is like a high priest. Oh, really? So I assume he's soaking it all up too? Yeah. Actually, the Marsha commentary says that the ger is most at home in the Kohen presence and topics. In fact, Abraham received the laws of the priesthood with the priesthood from Shem. So the more the ger is in the temple, he's really being himself. He's like a rabbi at this point. He can teach. He can help with the red heifer. He's a deputy priest. And we're not saying like, oh, we'll pat you on the head, this is what you get to do. This is his job. Just like Pinchas was grafted into the seed of Aaron. The ger is grafted into the seed of Shem. He is at home. He is working the temple dedicated to God. He's one of the boys. He's part of the team. Talk about being grafted with Israel, but not just to say, oh, you're like a Jew. No, you're with God. God loves you. You love God. That's what this is about. Not about a 10th man and holding hands. You affect them. They affect you. The temple needs this. The temple needs both bloods running through. The second temple tried it and it was perverted. The idea of the bloodlines and the seed going through the temple, the crest of arms and free will theory and philosophy, that was the second temple. And the root is the third temple. And you have the mazel of Torah is what it all comes down to. The Parsha talks about the prophet, the king, the ger, the Nazir, priest, the warrior, the woman, the Levite. The Parsha is about people. People are called life. And we all live in the temple that we don't know. We do things, we have mazel, you have peculiar ways about you, and you hide it, you cover it up because you're human. You say, I don't really do that weird stuff, do I? If I let it out, they'll think I'm weird. The reason why is because when you're still in impurity, you don't know how to channel it. That's called growth. Everyone's in impurity. When you come out into purity, let's say the path of righteousness, the Ger Tzedek, who's keeping, he's already proven righteous. The Jew also has to go from impurity to righteous. You let more of it out. You become really you. So there's like these personality tests, oh, I'm a 1, I'm a 2, I'm a this, I'm a type of this. When you become really holy by you, for the Ger, it's being a Kohen. All the types fit. I'm a little this, I'm a little that, because you're being you. That's your mazel. The question is, what are you supposed to be doing is where you are in the temple, what your job in relationship to that temple. Are you coming 3 times a year? Do you live there? You live next door? You live 3 houses down? What is the relationship with the temple? Do you have the mazel of a warrior? Of a priest? of a Nazir, a prophet, a king, and the Ger and the Jew share all of them. A Ravna was a king. A Vadia was a prophet. Shimshon's a Nazir. Shem's a priest. Shimshon's a warrior. Mepia Gavora, from the mouth of God I heard two. There's two nations in the Torah equally 50-50, the Ger and the Jew. The Malchus revelation are the 12 pathways of the 12 tribes. But if you're saying there's two, let's say the two parts of Malchus, male, female, inner dimension, outer dimension, where they're synonymous. 12 and 12, last time I checked, was 24. 24 watches in heaven, 24 hours a day, that's day and night, around the clock, 24 Gematria David. The King, Messiah, represents both, day and night. One may have the scepter in the hand by day, but the other has a scepter by night. It's around-the-clock effort and union. And this is Parashas Nasso. All about the third temple. Where the Gerim are together with the Jew. The two absolutely need each other. To teach the ways of the laws comes from one to the other, for the other to teach the laws of the land of Israel. Whether it be the body and the soul, whether it be in the aspects of the priesthood, the service, every element of Torah service to God, we all know it requires both, deep down. And we're just told by Amalek and the enemy, no, you don't. Deep down we do. In every place you find something Jewish, something Torah, there's always, in some way, shape, or form, right under your nose, that Ger revelation. Just like with Shimshon, it was from, the ambiguity of the story. With the temple, it's how does the Ger get there? You have to think big. The Ger is Mochen God was high intellect. Think big enough to contain both. This world's not big enough for the two of us. That's right. So make it bigger. The world must expand. The land of Israel is called the land of the deer, Eretz Tzvi, because the skin stretches. The world's called the land of Israel. We have to expand the world. That is Tikkun Olam. Stop saying it's a small world and go big beyond yourself. Step out of your backyard. The Jew will find the Ger will find the Jew. It's like when you say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. The Tikkuni Zohar says that's a hint of Shem. And then Jacob responds to his sons, Baruch Shem Kavod Moko Solei Loved. And the spiral goes on and on. That will conclude Parashas Nasso. This parsha contains really the depths of the expanded world as the Mishkan was completed as a microcosm of the world. One little parsha, the census through the Mishkan, has enough knowledge in it that's filled 6,000 years worth of knowledge. Imagine that. Everything we know comes from that parsha on a Kabbalistic scale. If we can even actualize 1% of this parsha, the fusion of atomic warfare of uniting the Jew and the Ger on any of these points, how much more so will that expand our universe? And by that, hopefully, is enough to bring the Mashiach and the redemption and the Beit HaMikdash that we all wish should come to strive to serve together in. With that said, Shavuot Tov, have a good week. Questions, comments, or feedback, we reach at Rabbi Katz at virtualyeshiva.com. See everybody on Wednesday. Have a great week.